Good morning, welcome to Sports Central, brought to you live and exclusive on Spectrum Television, all the way from the beautiful hills of Ipiaku and right here in Akwa Ibom State. My name is Tina, quite excited to be back on your screens. Fresh week, first perspective to look for in the world of sport. We're talking about March coming to an end, and very soon would all be in April, and lots of superstars already making history for themselves. Almost at the end of the first quarter of the year, likes of Yannick Sinner and Arina Zabalenka had to win the Sunshine Doubles. We're talking about the BNP Paribas Open as well as the Miami Open. And for Yannick Sinner, he becomes the first man to do it since Roger Federer in 2017. We'll talk about all of these stories and even more. In the world of combat sports, we had Nigerians faring differently in their respective zones. In the mixed martial arts division, we had Isola Desanya losing his fourth consecutive fight to the Manju Paifa via a second round technical knockout. We also had Moses Itaoma in boxing defeating Jermaine Franklin in a fifth round knockout victory. We'll talk about all of these stories even in the world of football, where we had international friendlies opponents, and we had France yesterday defeating Colombia by 3-1. These and many more will be looked at on the show today. Remember, you can follow us on all social media handles. Go to Facebook, go to X, on his Twitter, go to TikTok as well, and hit the follow button on the Spectrum TV Live. We'll take just a quick break. When we're back, Sport Wrap-Up info. Now we'll start with tennis, where Yannick Sinner made history Sunday when he won the Miami Open to complete the Sunshine Doubles. The Italian defeated Jiri Lehecka 6-4, 6-4 in the hard-court final, becoming the first male since Roger Federer in 2017 to win Indian Wells in Miami in the same season. Sinner is the first to do so without dropping a set across the two events. A dominant Sinner extended his record to 34 consecutive set wins at ATP Masters 1000 level, dating back to the start of last year's Rolex Masters, and he improved to 19 wins and just 2 losses this season. A 7-time ATP Masters 1000 champion, Sinner now trails world number 1 Carlos Alcaraz by 1,190 points in the ATP Live rankings after making a statement this month. The 24-year-old won Indian Wells for the first time in his career, and on Sunday became the 8th different male player to win the Sunshine Doubles. Lehecka, who's 24, was competing in his maiden ATP Masters 1000 final, and he's set for a new career high number 14 in Monday's ATP rankings. Now to the WTA scene, where world number 1 Arina Zabalenka beat Karika Kagov 6-2, 4-6, 6-3 to retain her Miami Open title and extend her exceptional start to 2026. Belarusian Zabalenka, who's 27, is the 5th female player and the first since Iga Swiatek in 2022 to complete the Sunshine Doubles by winning titles at Indian Wells in Miami in the same season. Victoria Azarenka, Kim Clijsters, and Steffi Graf are the other 3 women to have previously achieved that feat. Zabalenka has won 3 WTA Tour titles and 23 of her 24 matches during this calendar year. Her only loss was in January's Australian Open final to world number 2 Elena Rybakina, who had been the only player to win a set against Zabalenka in 2026 before American Cody Kokogov sent the Miami final into a decider. Despite losing, Goff will move above Poland's Swiatek to 3rd in the world when the rankings are updated. Now onto the speed lanes of Formula 1, where Kimi Antonelli took his 2nd win in succession and the lead of the World Championship after being helped to victory in the Japanese Grand Prix by a safety car period. The 19-year-old Italian had not yet made a pit stop, while his rivals for victory, McLaren's Oscar Piastri and Mercedes teammate George Russell, had when Oliver Biermann Haas crashed heavily. That gave Antonelli a pit stop that cost him less time than the others and ensured he could retain the lead. A frustrated Russell finished 4th behind Piastri and Ferrari's Charles Leclerc, as Antonelli would beat him for the 2nd consecutive race. Antonelli becomes the youngest driver in history to lead the championship and leads his teammate by 9 points. And now to reports where Nigerian football administrator Samson Adamu has been appointed acting Secretary General of the Confederation of African Football yesterday, becoming the first Nigerian to hold the position in the organization's 7-decade history. Adamu, who previously served as CAF's Director of Tournament and Events, takes over from Swiss Congolese Veron Mosengo Omba, who resigned yesterday amid growing criticism over his leadership and the controversial stripping of Senegal's African Cup of Nations title. The appointment was proposed by the CAF Executive Committee and ratified by the Congress at its meeting yesterday at the Giza Palace Hotel in Cairo, Egypt. Adamu will now oversee CAF's operation during a turbulent period for African football. Mosengo Omba had announced his departure as a retirement, citing a desire to focus on personal projects after more than 30 years in international football administration. His resignation follows criticism over his extended stay beyond CAF's mandatory retirement age of 63 and calls for greater accountability in the organization. Now to football proper, where Desire Doué scored his first senior goals for France as he swept aside Colombia in a 3-1 friendly win at the Northwest Stadium in Maryland. Doué gave France a first-half lead, and after Marcus Thuram's star-win header before the break, the Paris Saint-Germain forward struck their third early in the second half, with Jaminton Campos finding Colombia's consolation. France made 11 changes after last Thursday's 2-1 win against Brazil. N'Golo Kante was named captain on his 35th birthday, and Didier Deschamps' squad showcased their strength in depth at the home of NFL side Washington Commanders. Colombia, who lost 2-1 to Croatia in Orlando on Thursday, finished third in World Cup qualifying behind Argentina and Ecuador, and are 13th in FIFA's rankings, but were no match for France's second-string 11. The South Americans were first to threaten when left-back Johan Mojica's superb cross was thrown narrowly wide of a post by France centre-half Lucas Hernandez, but 2 goals in 12 minutes before half-time put France firmly in control of the game. Doué lashed onto a loose ball on the edge of the penalty area, and his low shot flew into the bottom corner via deflection of Daniel Munoz in the 29th minute. Kante's brilliant block tackle denied James Rodriguez a shooting chance before France doubled the lead 4 minutes before half-time. Monaco midfielder Marc Descleuche swung over an excellent cross from the right, and Thuram jumped Colombia's defense to power home a header. And that's all we have for you on Sport Wrap-Up this morning, but we'll get into the exciting conversation, talking about in-depth analysis on all the stories we have for you this Monday morning. Stick around.
Another exciting morning to be back to look at sports developments across the globe. It is Sports Central, and I am Mutabe David, delighted to return on your screens this fine morning to further have conversations about what's happening in the exciting world called sports. Well, fresh off the weekend, we had numerous sporting actions, emerging champions, especially in the 1,000 masses event, both in the WTA and the ATP category. We call it the Sunshine Doubles. We'll take a look at who won, and of course what could actually count, as we're looking forward to more competitions. We'll also look at the world of boxing. As regards Nigerian players, we'll take a look at the world of football as well, with the FIFA World Cup qualifiers and friendly matches still being quite a very dominant conversation in this particular international break. Well, fun, Itina joins, and we'll be doing this together this particular morning. Good morning, Fon. A delight to be back.
Excited to be back, Peter. I think you've already said it all. We had new champions over the weekend. Also in combat sports, we had Nigerians very differently. Moses Itaoma winning his match, his bout, and Israel Bassey and losing the 4th consecutive one. But he said he's not retiring. And it's beginning to get a little bit sad for Nigerians because we expected him to bounce back. Joe Pfeiffer is ranked 14th in that particular category, and Israel Adesanya was ranked 4th before that particular bout. So if you listen to a 14th-ranked, fighter, it's definitely going to be difficult for you to get something else. But let's see how he rebounds from that loss.
Well, of course, we'll definitely look at what happened to Israel Adesanya just over the weekend. But let's start off with those who were champions over the weekend, and that's the Miami Open. Yannick Sinner being part, and of course the conversation this particular morning. The man, Yannick Sinner, made history. That was when he won the Miami Open to also complete the Sunshine doubles in that particular scene. The Italian defeated Jiri Leaka, that we mentioned last week, 6-4, 6-4 in the hardcourt final, becoming the first male since Roger Federer in 2017 to win Indian Wells and the Miami Open in the same season. Sinner is the first to do so without dropping a set across 2 events, and the man, of course, was also named champions of the Sunshine doubles for fun. The first time we're seeing this since Roger Federer. It counts for something. And recently we've also talked about how excellent Yannick Sinner have been on hard courts competition, getting double figures of wins and surpassing some greats we've seen, of course, over the years. And it just looks like Yannick Sinner is actually back into contending for something very handy this year.
Quite exciting to see Yannick Sinner, just like you mentioned. The man is now 19 wins and just 2 losses, 2026, and we're barely rounded up March now. We've still got 9 months to look out for the world of tennis, so it's going to be a very exciting battle between Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz for the world #1 position. Last year we saw them change that particular position, I think about 3 times or thereabout. So this season it would not surprise me to see some interchanging time and time again for Yannick Sinner. I think he's done well, looking at winning the Indian Wells, now winning the Miami Open, the first man to do since 2017. Before now, he had never won the Indian Wells in his career, but he had to do it to do something unprecedented. So quite exciting to see where he goes from here. It's all about keeping that momentum. Hopefully no injury worries anymore, because I think that's the only thing that can stop Yannick Sinner at this point. We've seen him defeat different superstars, and I think there is no one right now when you want to look at tennis, the tennis landscape, the current ATP landscape. I don't see any other tennis player who can definitely match Yannick Sinner 2-4, apart from Carlos Alcaraz and Novak Djokovic. So I think he's going to dominate tennis this particular year for quite a long time. Now 1,190 points behind Carlos Alcaraz. If Carlos doesn't do something the very next championship, we might just see that world #1 changing spots somewhere around April or May. So very exciting times to watch tennis at this moment.
Well, we're looking forward to see what happens to the Italian Yannick Sinner. How long can he be very excellent in all of these top-level competitions? Has been a very big question. But we quickly move ahead and look at the WTA scene. Aryna Sabalenka, the Belarusian, of course, she's also a current world #1 in the WTA rankings, beating home favorites Cory Kokogov 6-2, 4-6, 6-3 to retain her Miami Open title and further extending her exceptional start to 2026. We're already talking about 3 titles for the Belarusian international in the first quarter of the year. Well, Sabalenka is the 5th female player and the first since Iga Swiatek in 2022 to complete the Sunshine doubles by winning titles in Indian Wells at Miami in the same season. Just like I said, she's won 3 top-level titles this year, and out of the 24 matches she has played this year, she's won 23 of them. That shows you the excellent strides of Belarusian Aryna Sabalenka. The only time she lost this year was in January. That was the Australian Open final to world #2 Elena Rybakina, and since then Aryna Sabalenka haven't lost any game, and she's been able to make it back-to-back wins now in Miami. And not just that, she has also completed the Sunshine doubles by virtue of Cory Kokogov. I know we'll talk about that particular conversation more later, but Cory Kokogov, home favorite, was expected to do something very handy, especially at a point where you have home supporters or presence in the stadium cheering your name and of course supporting you ahead of the other opponent. but Zabalenka was just way more too clinical than Cory Kukugov, and she was able to get the victory.
First, I'll start with Cory Kukugov. I some would say she's the loser in this particular one, but I think she impressed me. I was not expecting her to get a set, against Aryna Zabalenka, but she was able to do that in the second set. She got the victory in the second set, and shows that she actually, was able to compete, at the same level with Aryna Zabalenka. Not many would expect Cory Kukugov after all the problems she's had. Looking at the end of 2025 and early 2026, she's really had problems with her serving and all of that, but she was able to match the world number one. I think it's a sign of things to come. I just hope she can keep improving, because for me, I think it's a progress for her. 22 years now, and Aryna Zabalenka is 27, so you would not really expect her to be at the same level we have. But when you see what she's been able to do, reaching the finals of the Miami Open, when I was expecting her to be one of the early casualties when you talk about upsets in this particular competition, because Cory Kukugov has really, I think she's not really been there in terms of consistency. She wins a few games, and before you know, she's struggling all over again. So she's that young star that's not really put a foothold on, winning top games and all of that. So I was quite surprised to see her match Aryna Zabalenka. And for Aryna Zabalenka herself, I think it's just a sign of things to come this year. After the Australian Open final, I know a lot of people wrote her off, listening to Lena Rubakina and all of that. She decided to stay out of the next competition. Came back in Miami and then won it, and now she's won the came back in Indian Wells, won it. Now she's won the Miami Open. I think it's quite exciting to see what the year holds for Aryna Zabalenka. World number one currently, as he has stayed there for quite a long time.
Well, let's talk about Cory Kukugov now, because after reaching the finals, she has now climbed to world number 3. And that means Zabalenka world number 1, Rybakina world number 2, Cory Kukugov world number 3, and then we'll talk about Iga Swiatek. Is it really a year when we may just likely see Gov breaking into the top 2 of the WTA rankings?
Well, I think, just like I said, she has to maintain, the current form we've seen her in, because you can never tell which Cory Kukugov shows up in the next competition. Because I've been a very huge fan of Cory Kukugov since her breakout year, but she's really failed to. There's something about consistency. Look at the likes of Carlos Alcaraz, Jannik Sinner. Let's go to the women's category now. Aryna Zabalenka. They have something going for them. But Cory Kukugov, as at let's say September last year, she was as low as world number 6. That's how poor she's been. When it comes to consistency, winning. Before you know, she's out there again in the murky waters. So for me, I think if she can keep the level she's currently, prettying in, definitely world number 2. It's not difficult. Lena Rybakina, for me, I think she's also a lady where Cory Kukugov can comfortably compete against. Aryna Zabalenka is in a class of her own for me, but Cory Kukugov as world number 2, I don't see that being difficult. She definitely can get it done.
We're looking forward to what happens now in all the top level competitions, but at the moment, Cory Kukugov making it to the final has also made her become world number 3 in the WTA rankings, and Zabalenka still retains a position as current world number 1 in the WTA standings. Away from that now, the likes of Siniakova and Townsend, of course, completed the Sunshine doubles in the Miami, of course, category. Katerina Siniakova and Taylor Townsend became the 6th woman doubles team to complete the Sunshine doubles. Doing so just one day after Aryna Zabalenka achieved the feat in the singles category was the big conversation. But we move straight now to the track race of Formula 1. Talk about another Grand Prix that happened over the course of the weekend. It was a victory for a youngster, a 19-year-old Kimi Antonelli, becoming the youngest championship leader in Formula 1 history. Well, the 19-year-old Italian took the lead in the standings with 72 points, overtaking fellow Mercedes driver George Russell, who sits second with 63 points after finishing 4th on Sunday. And this is basically about the very fact that Antonelli won the Japanese Grand Prix, his second Grand Prix as a 19-year-old, and currently he is top of a championship table. It just looks like it might just actually be quite a very sensational season for the youngster. But then many will ask question, can we still expect Antonelli to continue this way up until the end of the season? But first of all, let's talk about the Japanese Grand Prix. It just looks like it is actually this year, and Formula 1 is in favor of the team Mercedes at the moment, because we're talking about, I think, about 3 Grand Prix already for them in terms of who's won. George Russell has won 1. Kimi Antonelli has actually won 2.
Well, I think for Kimi Antonelli, I think he's a name on the lips of many sports, lovers this particular weekend. The man did something quite handy for himself, finishing, as winner of the Grand Prix 2 times in round 19. That's something to talk about, and I just want to hope that he can keep on. After the Grand Prix, he was speaking to newsmen, and he said, yes, it's early days, but definitely is a good place to be in, because now you're feeling I'm on one of the best, because before the start of the season, I'm sure Kimi Antonelli didn't even dream of winning a Grand Prix. Probably maybe finishing in the podium, having a podium finishes maybe 2 or 3 times to help his teammates and all of that. But now he's won 2 Grand Prix. He's beginning to have that self-belief. He's beginning to have that drive. Yes, maybe I can just go on and win it. It's going to be very nice to see a 19-year-old win the Constructor Drivers Championship at the end of the year, which is something that's difficult, but I don't see it being impossible, because Kimi Antonelli has shown class 2 consecutive ones now, 2 consecutive Grand Prix, and before we have the next one, I think it's going to be maybe May or June, because we have breaks now. The Saudi Arabia Grand Prix has been cancelled because of all the fight in the Middle East. So a long time for these superstars to recalibrate, just rest, and try to think of what to do next. So for Antonelli, good to see him doing this at 19.
Many asking question: is he the emerging next Lewis Hamilton at Team Mercedes?
Well, everyone is always there's this particular saying: everyone is the next big thing until they are not. So I don't like jumping on the bandwagon of saying it's the next, this is the next. I think Kimi Antonelli can pave his own path. I'm waiting to see how he does it.
Well, of course, consistency will definitely be the watchword for Kimi Antonelli, the young star, already sending tongues wagging in the Formula 1 category. 2 Grand Prix out of 3 for the man at the moment. But still talking about the track race of Formula 1, we hear 4-time world champion talk about Max Verstappen says he's considering quitting Formula 1 at the end of 2026 season. And that comes amid his dissatisfaction with the sport's new regulations. What the biggest rule change in Formula 1 history actually saw new power units and chassis introduced for this year, with a shift towards electrical energy requiring new approaches from the drivers. So the man Verstappen has expressed his concern over the rules ahead of their introduction, while his negative feelings towards them have also likely been compounded by the struggles we've seen for Team Red Bull, this particular team. Just looking forward to considering whether or not to continue in Formula 1 beyond this particular year. This would definitely be the shocking news if it actually happens. Max Verstappen saying, I'm quitting Formula 1. We may just likely be seeing a one-way traffic and no rivalry at all in the Formula 1 history.
Well, I think it will be shocking. Max Verstappen, unarguably one of the biggest names in Formula 1 at this point. He's had a very tough year, a tough start to the year, and it's looking like it's not even going to get better for him. I think he didn't even finish in the top 5 this last Japanese Grand Prix. So we look at it that way. There's a reason why he's saying, I'm going to quit. I think he's just trying to put pressure on the administrators, and all of that, to try to see if they can change the rules. But I would say it's all about trying to adapt, because if the rules get changed for one party, imagine what happens if the rules get changed again and someone is not doing well. Someone can just come out and say, okay, I want to quit as well, all of that. But we've had different superstars come out to criticize these new rules. So I would not say it's definitely Max Verstappen alone. So something has to be done about it. For real, something has to be done about it. But the question is, does Max Verstappen really need to retire at this point? I think he's still got, yards of years ahead of him to try and win more titles and all of that. So it's going to be sad to see Max Verstappen retire. I hope he doesn't retire.
Well, of course, let's quickly look at the world of basketball this particular morning, where Charles Alexander scored 30 points at the Oklahoma City Thunder, defeated the New York Knicks 111 points to 100 points. The Rockets got the better of the Pelicans 134 to 102, while the Nuggets defeated the Warriors 111 points to 93, and that was their 6th straight win consecutively. But it looks like the Thunders, they actually had some momentary blips in the last couple of games, but they have been able to return back to victory with one man, one name, Charles Alexander, are doing something very handy for the OKC. Just looks like whether or not you defeat them, it still looks like the OKC we saw last season are still the ones this season.
Definitely, NBA lead inside this season. I think they're closer to 60 wins now.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, I feel it's just about getting to the playoff and seeing if they can continue that same feat that we saw them with last season. Because it's not about winning the regular season alone. You have to continue that in the playoffs. So there are a lot of teams who I think can match them 2-for-2 when you get to the playoffs. Talking about the Boston Celtics have won against them the regular season this season. Talking about Spurs, the Spurs side have gotten 4 wins over the OKC this season already. So I'm really excited to see what happens in the playoffs.
Well, of course, it would be quite an evolving conversation as we look forward to see. The Nuggets beat the Warriors 116 points to 93 for their 6th straight win in their last 6 games. But let's quickly move away from that and look at the world of boxing this particular morning. Starting off with the bout we saw, particularly over the course of the weekend. It has to do with Britain's Moses Itama, reinforced his status as one of the heavyweights boxing brightest stars, with quite a destructive 5th round stoppage victory over German Franklin at Manchester Co Life Arena just over the course of the weekend. While the 21-year-old methodically broke down the American who had been brought in as a genius test, landing grips combinations and heavy power punches to get this victory. So Franklin climbed off the canvas in the 3rd round but was knocked out cold in the 5th by a clean uppercut. And the man, Moses Itama, still continues to dominate and of course put his name on the lips of many in this particular bout. Well, a good victory for Itama right here.
I think for Moses Itama, I like the progression. You know, we're not seeing him being catapulted to where he's not supposed to be. You know, if he's fighting Alexander Usyk at this point, I'll be very, very concerned for him. If he's fighting like Anthony Joshua, I'll be very concerned. So I'm happy that he's, you know, fighting some of these so-called old names, some, you know, gradually fading out. So, but German Franklin is a very tough test. He's never been knocked out in his career. Never been knocked out. So Moses Itama. So definitely something to look for. I'm excited to see where Moses Itama goes from here. You know, just like I said, I like the progression, slow and steady. He's got just 14 bouts. He's won 12 of them by knockout.
So he's still young, I think 21.
Yeah. So when you look at it, I think there's no need for him to get rushed. At a point, there were talks about him beating Mike Tyson's record of being the youngest ever champion, but that ship has sailed. He's already gone past the age Mike Tyson won his. So I'm very happy that now he can just look at it and say, okay, I can take this at my own pace. He can become the world champion before 25. That's 4 years from now. So there's no need to rush. You know, if he's rushed into a bout where, you know, the opponent is class ahead of him, you know, it's going to be very difficult for Moses Itama. So I like the progression, slow and steady, like I said.
Progression, the watchword rather from fun. But let's quickly look at a Nigerian international in the mixed martial art category. And I'm talking about former middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. The man endured his 4th consecutive loss after being stopped by Joe Pyfer in their main event clash at Ultimate Fighting Championships Seattle. The fight held at the Climate Pledge Arena started brightly for Adesanya, who controlled the early exchanges with sharp jabs and even leg kicks while keeping his opponent at range. He also showed good awareness in defending takedown attempts in the opening round. However, the momentum changed when the man Pyfer stepped up the pressure, asked bulk of the questions, and was able, with series of punches and elbows, brought the man, talk about Israel Adesanya, down. The defeat is another setback for Adesanya. The last time he won was in April 2023, where he regained the middleweight title against Alex Pereira. 4 losses in his last 4 bouts, and this man keeps saying, I am not retiring. What exactly does he want?
I think it's just a matter of where he's at in his mental state at the moment. You know, his headspace is saying, I'm not quitting. I still want to do this. You know, my head is in the game. He's 36. There are people older than him who are still fighting.
Are they actually winning? So that's another question.
We've got Charles Oliveira. You know, although he's in another weight category, but still Charles Oliveira is older than Israel Adesanya, still winning as well. So I'm not saying Adesanya has, you know, 5 years ahead of him. I'm saying he's just saying I'm not retiring now. So he's still looking at the, you know, a foreseeable future, maybe 1 year, 2 years for him in the next in the sport, because right now he's a veteran of the sport. He's a big name, and losing to Joe Pyfer will definitely hurt him, because just like I said, in the intro of the show, Joe Piper was ranked 14th before this particular bout. Israel Adesanya was ranked 4th. So after this particular bout, you're asking yourself, where else for Israel Adesanya? If he cannot beat the 14th ranked fighter, who is he going to beat? That's the question.
Well, we're looking forward to see whether or not the man Israel Adesanya will reconsider his future. Now you've got 4 defeats in your last 4 bouts. It raises concerns about your quality and your readiness to take more bouts and even expect victory at the end. But we'll take a short breather right here. When we return, we'll definitely be looking at football stories and what's happening in the exciting world of football. Do stay with us. Welcome back. It is still Sports Central on Spectrum Television. Now we're looking at football stories now. Starting off with the Nigeria Premier Football League. It has taken a new shape, a new toll, especially for Rivers United. After losing 4 consecutive games, they have been able to, get back to victory. And with that victory, we've seen Rivers United now topping the MPFL table with 1 point better than Enugu Rangers, who have 54 points from the same number of games. Well, Rivers United have 55 points now. Just a quick rundown of some of the games that happened. Bayelsa United, the 4-1 winners over Kano Pillars. Ikorodu City were also victorious over Warri Wolves, 4-3. While we had Al Kanami Warriors play 1-1 draw with Remo Stars. Enyimba defeated Abia Warriors in that particular derby clash. 2-1 it ended in favor of Enyimba. Bado FC played goalless draw with Katsina United, while Niger Tornadoes were 2-0 winners over Wiki Tourists. Well, unfortunately, it looks like a 2-horse race now. Enugu Rangers are losing, Rivers United winning, and now they're back to the top of the table, 1 point separating both sides. So talking about, I think mathematically should be 6 games before the end of the season, and it just looks like it is an MPFL season that may likely go down the wire.
Very exciting MPFL season. I think it's quite sad that the NPFL is not having the coverage it needs to have, because I think this season is very exciting. You know, we're having a title chase at the top of the table. We're also having teams struggling to avoid relegation. Come on. Remo Stars yesterday picked up an away draw, which also helps them in the relegation fight. Imba had to defeat our Warriors as well. To look at that fight, I think it's very, very exciting. Canopy has lost humiliating yesterday, 4-1 it ended. So quite exciting to see what happened, and let's keep tabs on it. For Rivers United, Vinicius George is not ready to relinquish that title. He wants to win something, you know, so I'm sure he's going to give his best, and let's see what happens at the end of the season.
Well, of course, we also hear that Nigeria's Samson Adamu has been named CAF Acting Secretary General, and that comes after, of course, the previous secretary, you know, officially resigned owing to the current, happenings in CAF. Definitely, many are already congratulating him. The Nigerian Football Federation have also sent their congratulatory messages to Samson Adamu, also being an acting, Secretary General for the CAF, Confederation of African Football. Congratulations to him. Wouldn't dwell much on that this particular morning. Let's quickly head straight to other conversations where we hear that Bassey has actually set his sight on April, returning to full fitness, and that comes, the recent injury on Bassey, and that was also one of the problems why he couldn't report to the Super Eagles camp for their friendly games. He opted out due to injury worries, and we hear April has been set aside for the man's return to full fitness. We also hear Morocco and South Africa are ready to step up as co-hosts ahead of the AFCON 2027. There have been several concerns about Uganda and other co-hosts, about 3 nations, the likes of Kenya and Uganda, who were also looking forward to host the 2027 AFCON. There have been conversations about how ready they are ahead of this particular competition. But we hear that in case they're not ready before 2027, Morocco and South Africa seems more ready to take over and also do something very handy for the Confederation of African Football. But let's quickly look at the European space, where news broke just yesterday that Tottenham Hotspurs and Igor Tudor have mutually parted ways. Yes, Igor Tudor have only had 1 win since he was appointed as Tottenham Hotspur's manager, and that win was against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. It was rather unfortunate. Even after beating Atletico Madrid, they still exited the competition. Well, barely about 44 days after being appointed, the man has officially left his role. He's won just 1 of his 7 matches as Spurs manager, and of course we're actually having questions as regards who next will be the manager of Spurs. Well, for you put it side by side with the fact that we hear that Roberto De Zerbi is actually touted to be their manager. Well, Roberto De Zerbi, according to reports, have told them if you accept relegation, then I may consider coming. But Spurs are actually looking for an immediate appointment, which to a large extent, De Zerbi wouldn't want to follow them to the English Championship if it definitely happens. But Igor Tudor finally leaving Spurs.
Quite sad for Spurs and Igor Tudor. So I remember when he was appointed, I said I didn't really see, light at the end of the tunnel for both Igor Tudor and Tottenham Hotspur, because he's not really a manager where you can look at his track record and say, okay, this is something he's done, quite significant. So I wasn't expecting anything from this Tottenham job, but at the end of it, quite sad the way they're parting ways after 8 games in charge, just like you said, just 1 victory. Quite sad for Tottenham. But for Roberto De Zerbi, he's a big manager now. He's a big manager within his right. Moved from Brighton to Marseille. Didn't really do much with Marseille, but at least was able to compete with Paris Saint-Germain in that French league. Now he's back. He's saying, come on, you guys have to escape relegation first. You're not going to get me there. And then I start suffering like Igor Tudor. So I would say, I agree with the man Roberto De Zerbi. Right now, Tottenham is in a catastrophic state. You don't have to go there and self-destruct with them. Just wait and see out what happens at the end of the season. If Tottenham Hotspur can survive, you start the rebuilding process immediately. So there's no need for them to rush Roberto De Zerbi in. I stand with the man in this particular one.
Well, of course, we're looking forward to what happens now for Tottenham Hotspur. We hear that ex-England and Spurs striker Jermaine Defoe has been named Working FC boss. Well, Working FC are in the English National League. That's about down tier of English football. Well, that happens to be his first, managerial assignment. Basically, he also had some stints, especially as one of the backroom staffs in the Scottish League, but he didn't stay there for too long. So now he's actually, and a coach now with Woking FC, which is in the English National League. We're looking forward to what happens. We hear 75% rather of fans have opposed VAR in the English Premier League, saying they haven't really added much value to the English Premier League. We do not know what gets to happen now. The fans are ready. If survey was actually conducted to 20 Premier League clubs fans, but not all were able to, of course, fill in those surveys. But we hear a few, about 30% who were able to, of course, answer those survey questions, said they are not in support of the VAR in the English Premier League. They comes amid concerns about what the Premier League has been able to do in recent times and the dramatic scenes, and it just looks like fans are actually fed up about the controversy surrounding the video assistant referee.
Well, for me, the biggest problem with VAR has been inconsistency. You see them call a foul for a similar incident, and the next one they keep it short about it. Watch a game, Manchester United against Bournemouth just before the international break. A foul was made on Ahmad Diallo with two hands. They didn't call that a foul. It wasn't even wasn't even given anything. But on the other end, Maguire made a foul which was lesser. When you look at it with your normal eyes, lesser than what happened. It was a penalty plus a red card. So VAR has been very inconsistent. It's really inconsistent. I don't think it should be scrapped altogether. I think they need to hold these VAR officials to order. Whatever they have to do, it should be consistent with the land. If you call a foul here, the same thing should also be held in this other side. It shouldn't be one thing here and another thing in this other end. For me, that's going to help the whole concept of VAR.
Well, we're looking forward to see after this survey whether or not the officiating as regards VAR would actually improve in the English Premier League. But just before we bounce, we hear Martin Odegaard becomes the 10th Arsenal player to pull out of international duty. Some are also of the opinion that Mikel Arteta is also trying to be very, very cautious about his players, especially in the last lap of the Premier League title race. And we also hear Desire Doye during an international friendly. The man had a double for France as they defeated Colombia in fine fashion. Back-to-back victories for the French national team against Brazil and now against Colombia, doing pretty well under Didier Deschamps. But here we'll draw the curtain. Thank you very much for returning.
Pleasure as always.
We'll return tomorrow for more extensive conversations in the exciting world of sports. Have a fabulous day and bye for now.